Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So today I feel like is going to be like kind of a long-awaited live chat. Because I feel like
because you've been waiting 20 minutes for us to start. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that too. It also took us a while to start. Apologies. But everybody always asks us to talk about Hel and Babd.
Mm-hmm.
And so today we are talking about Hel and Babd. Dun dun dun.
Bum, bum, bum. I'm going to try and share this in all the groups. So
yeah,
while Cris introduces everything.
Is here as well, obviously. It's a live chat with her and I again. She is getting
half my
links out. Yes. all the links out to all the places so we can see all of your faces in chat. Not literally, that would be a little creepy, but yeah. Millions of tiny faces just
How did you get from seeing faces to creepy? There's all these tiny shrunken heads or something.
Because if there were a bunch of tiny little faces reacting as we were going along, like in still frames, think about it.
Yeah, a little bit.
See? Okay.
Little bit.
Yeah,
all right, fair enough.
A little bit. Un poquito.
This is the first time in history something's been easier on the iPad than on the laptop. This is a day long remembered.
Well, we found its use.
Yeah.
So, hello everybody out there. Hello Rob. Hello Johnny Dragon. Hello Willow. Magpie is moderating for us. Hi Magpie. Thank you for doing that. Dragon Iris. There's a bunch of people in here. So, let's start this off by just saying that as we go along today, if you guys have questions, just put them in. Like instead of having like just a time at the end. That's not how I roll. Just put them in throughout, and I will try and keep an eye on it and like move them over to the side so I can read them later if we don't address it right then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Love your faces. Let's get this started.
Yeah.
And of course, all of our links and everything are down below this video if you want to check either of us out. You don't know who we are. I'm insulted.
You probably know who we are by now.
I'm not, but you probably know.
Probably know. It's a fair bet.
Yup. All right, so Hel and Babd. Well, so Hel is the Norse goddess of the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And Babd is Joey.
Babd is
Joey. Like a short summary.
A short summary.
Yeah, no, Hel is as well.
Babd
but
is
Babd is kind of like a subsect kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, there's argument about it, about whether she's an individual out of a triad of goddesses that make up the Morrigan, or if she's an aspect of the Morrigan. But regardless, she's the Phantom Queen. She is associated with the Morrigan, and whether she is an aspect or one of the sisters is your own argument to decide. But
right.
Yeah, she's the Phantom Queen.
So she rules over
the realm of death.
Similar to Hel. All right. So
yeah,
it's kind of be a compare and contrast kind of day.
Yeah.
Like this is like we have two columns. There's Hel and there's Babd, and then we're just like 1 point for Hel, 1 point for Babd, 1 point for both of them.
It's basically goddess deathmatch, and I was thinking about this the other day because
oh my god, that's what I should have titled this.
Yeah. Because it works on two levels, like them like facing off, like yes. I am the queen, but also goddess death match because they match up. It's like matching squares.
I'm gonna hold on. Yeah,
you're gonna change the name.
Just keep talking about Babd.
Okay. So I really wanted to talk about Hel and Babd because basically Cris and I have been like, yeah, that's really similar. That's really similar. That's really similar. I think there's a lot of similarities between the Nordic and Celtic pantheon anyway. They're not identical, and we will cover the fact that they're not identikit goddesses. They're not the same. They're not the same goddess, but they feel like they could be sisters. And they really do have that kind of like sisterly energy to one another, to the point where I call Hel Auntie Hel.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm like, oh, Babd. Yep.
No.
You don't. Well, and they've come to us around the same times for stuff as well. Like they work together, literally.
Oh yeah. And they bring up similar themes within like spiritual path walking.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll bring it up later, but voice work for both of them has been like
Yeah.
a major theme for both of us, to the point where we've even had similar lessons at different times, completely different times, about speaking out and using a voice and how the voice is used and that sort of thing. So they even bring up like similar spiritual lessons, not the same, of course. And I don't want anyone to ever think we're saying they are the same goddess, because we're not. But they have some really interesting and quite eerie similarities at points.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, the Celtic tradition and like the Norse, Germanic, like that whole region, even like there was so much blending there that it makes sense that they would have a lot of similarities in a lot of different areas.
Well, the cultures are even similar.
Yeah.
Like the way that they would, the way the cultures were formed, and they were like conquering, and they would go out and they would conquer. That's true in both Celtic tribes as well as it is in Viking. Like, would you call them tribes? Tribes of Vikings, or
I
clans,
mean, I would.
maybe.
Sure.
So
tribes, yeah.
You know, and the way that they even structure things like the power of the spoken word in terms of magic quite similarly. And you know, you can argue that there are similarities between druids and then like Volva and Vidki in terms of their shamanistic magical pathworking and their emphasis on the power of the spoken word. And they were both oracular for the most part. They, as I understand it, like the poetic Edda in the Viking Norse mythology is written from outside the Viking perspective.
Yeah. So something that I know with Hel, and that they're actually bringing up in the comments, is that Hel is very hard to find information on, because, well, partly because when she was written about as a thing sometimes and not a person, like death, not death.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, she's kind of been shunned along with Loki in a lot of ways. So there's not a whole lot of content that's very, at least in my eyes, fairly written. Does Babe have something like that too, where it's harder to find information on her than the others?
Yeah. The mythos, a lot of the stuff that is mentioned in terms of like the myth from the time is written in kind of all right, I've got an example, because they kind of mention her in like passing, very much like you mentioned with goddess Hel. So here there is there arose a wild, impetuous, etc. There's a lot of descriptives. Contentious babe, which was shrieking and fluttering over their heads, and there a lot of the mentions of babe tend to be in kind of like passing. To my understanding, there isn't any like huge story myths the same way, because I know there is for Mocha. You know, she has her myth where she runs the race and when she's heavily pregnant and the men of Ulster and things, but I don't think there is like one overarching. Double check, because my brain has been mush for the best part of this week.
Yeah, no, this entire week, guys, I don't know about how you guys have been out there, but this entire week is just full of crazy. You can definitely tell we're building up to that eclipse.
But mostly she's mentioned in terms of her voice, like death screams and things like that.
Which is part of the phantom thing.
And then you'll have things where like her name is defined, so she's known as like some people believe that Babe Cather Battle Crow is the same as Babe. There's arguments with the reconstructing of things, and let's have a look. I think like mainly she's mentioned in like passing and with regards to like her lineage and stuff.
So
which I'm pretty sure
like secondary character in some of it, secondary, third. You know what I mean? Because Hel does a lot of that. There's none that's like directly about Hel, but there's stuff like Baldur's Death where he, you know, goes to her realm and then, you know, they travel down and talk to her. So like she's not a main character, but she's around.
Well, the thing about it is that people argue about whether or not you're taking into account the myths that are just when they're called Morrigan, when it's just Morrigan.
Okay.
So you have this whole, like, for example, here, they're like in the ancient Irish mythological account of the Second Battle of Magtured, a crucial battle against the Fomorians. Bave and the Morrigan drove them out of Ireland. Therefore, Bave with the Tuatha De Danann defeated the Fomorians. Before a battle, Bave also confronted and frightened the Irish hero Cuchulainn. Thus, she achieved by turning into Bave Catha, the crow or raven of battle. I'm not entirely sure that's 100% right, but it feels very much like that was the Morrigan in that myth, and they're differentiating there between Bave and the Morrigan, which I don't think is accurate. I don't think that's an accurate representation of what happened, and I'm going to get people coming at me for not knowing the exact myth.
Okay, so that's another similarity, though, that I find with Bave and Hel, is they ask you to look beyond what is physically there necessarily.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They're both like phantoms in a way.
Yeah, Hel will straight up tell you, if you go and journey to her, if you meditate to her, if you ask her, she will straight up tell you, like, nope, the things that are written about me are not the only thing. They are not even the beginning. Like, she's called the Forgotten. It's like the winners write the story kind of thing, but it wasn't like winner versus loser. It's just death has been made scary, and so her side wasn't really told.
Yeah. Okay, right. So there's an actual one in, and now I've got to pronounce Celtic stuff, which drives me crazy. In Tugal Brundne Dadurga, she takes the form of an ugly hag who prophesizes Cornea's downfall. She appears in a similar guise to foretell the slaying of Cormac, as well as taking the form of the washer at the ford. So she's often in the presenting the omen of death. She foretells death in the mythos. The cries of Bave may be considered an ill omen. Cormac's impending death is foreshadowed with the words, "The red-mouthed Baves will cry around the house, for bodies they will be solicitous, and pale Baves shall shriek." And people then make the crossover between that and the role of the Banshee. So some people kind of like interplay like Banshee mythos with Bave, and it all gets very confusing because people have decided it's the same thing. Oh, that's interesting. I need to know if that's accurate. Apparently the battlefield was sometimes referred to as the Garden of Bave.
Well, that's interesting too, because Hel's also had garden references as well. So there was a question about Hel in the. There's a couple questions already. I read somewhere the phrase "go to hell" was a term used to wish death on a person in terms of relating to the goddess Hel. True. There are theories that the Christian Hel came from Hel. Yes. But I will say that what's more likely, because you also have to look at like the view of that. So you're going to wish death on someone, but to their culture, that was a good thing. Like they were like, yeah, we're going to have like a good death. We're going to, we're going to die fighting. We're going to die for a cause. We're going to, better our family's fate, So when you say wish it upon someone, like it actually wouldn't have been a bad thing anyway. I have heard the phrase Hel holds half of them, or they would say, I forget the word for bed now, but it was basically like Hel's bed, which is deathbed. That's kind of where the deathbed thing came from. So Yeah, it's very possible. If you look at, someone just mentioned Jackson Crawford, who is amazing, and I could listen to his voice all freaking day. But he actually talks about that in detail. If you go and look, and he's a professor, so he actually will trace the etymology right in front of you. So like he has like this dry erase board, and he's got his deep little voice with his little bolo, and he's just like, this is what we do here, and and then runes. And I'm like, I fucking love you.
I might have to check that out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Who is that?
He actually is the guy that they worked with for a lot of the Vikings TV show.
And who was he? What was his name again?
Jackson Crawford.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna check that out.
He's got a deep voice. You'll know him when you find him.
Okay. And do you think it is better to gain a relationship with a deity than to rely on the myth? Because a lot of times the myths are fragmented and written by Christians.
Yes. I mean, I know I don't speak for Joey.
Yeah. Well, Joey gets into trouble with this subject every time.
Yeah. Well, So here's my thing: is I have been told repeatedly, whether by ancestors or by deity, that, papers are nice and all, but they don't really care about them. They care about you talking and connecting with them. And so to anyone who is always like, I can't find anything on Hel, it's like, what are you talking about? Talk to her. Go see her. And if she offers you a corpse hand, you better take it. Take it. Because that's a test.
That's something else we can talk about, testing for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. They both will test. Yeah. So I think that to an extent, yeah, it's much better to gain the relationship with a deity. But a lot of times what happens with myth is either you understand the myth through them or through doing them simultaneously, where you're also like researching, because what they'll do a lot of times, at least for me, is they'll give you like tidbits, they'll give you pieces, and then you go find the rest. Because they want you to mull it over. They want it to be a puzzle, because the more it's a puzzle, the more it matters to you, the more important it is, the more effort you put into it. So, I think that's also an extent of why you can't find a lot on Hel also, is because she's like, no, work for it. When you figure out that you just need to come talk to me, then we'll do this.
So I'm going to try and rein it in a little bit with this, because I can soapbox on this for hours. But with regards to the Morrigan, there are different lines of thought with regards to the mythos. There are reconstructionalists who will insist that you must stick to the myth as writ, and you must deconstruct all the words, and that's what matters, etc. And I love myth. I'm a big fan of mythology, but to me, not going beyond the myth feels like I'm only half doing the work to me. It feels like I'm not living my spirituality, because I'm focusing on, first and foremost, the work done by my ancestors. Ancient Celts, the way the ancient Celts saw the world, felt the world, responded to the world, which is not our current world. They lived in tribes, they lived in tight-knit communities, they went raiding their neighbors all the time. They had a very different sense of the way the world is. And the myth that we do have is recorded by Christians, as someone mentioned, not by the Celts themselves. So we're getting a skewed interpretation anyway. We're getting an interpretation through the lens of Christian monks.
Not that I'm dogging Christians. I'm just saying that's one perspective of something, not necessarily its truth. Yeah.
And they had a clear agenda, and the Christians kind of demonized gods such as the Morrigan into fairies. That's why you have myths of the goddess Morrigan being queen of the Fae and things like that, because the gods that they couldn't get rid of completely, they made them into bad spirits, bad fairies, things to be afraid of. And so we don't know how much of the way the goddess Morrigan Bave is presented as being ferocious and bloodthirsty and all the rest of it. How much of that is Celtic mythos of being bloodthirsty in battle, because that's truth of battle. The Celts were ferocious and bloodthirsty to an extent, and how much of it is the monks taking that and then warping that to be like, this is something and horrifying and uncivilized, look at this myth. We don't know. We can't value judge that at all, because we are just looking at something from history that we don't have historical context for the most part. And we can deconstruct that and take the lessons that we want, but then again, that's seeing myth through our current modern lens and how we understand words now. I mean, etymology is fascinating. I love it. I love the deconstruction of words. But
Yes.
If at some point something is mistranslated, if something is lost, if something is interpreted differently from how it was originally meant, and it interpreted differently from how the Christian monks put it down, which might not have been how it was meant to the Celts, you've got a whole line of Chinese whispers where it becomes something completely different. The other side of this, with regards to walking spiritual paths, is that I believe in evolutionary spirituality. I believe in evolutionary gods. I feel like if gods are stagnant, then they die off with the culture that they were born into, if you like, or were of paramount importance to. And if they don't adapt, then they don't evolve and don't shapeshift, then they don't stay relevant to modern people. So the evolution of gods makes more sense to me, because if people change and shift and adapt with regards to their environment, then why wouldn't gods? So it seems, and this is from a limited human perspective of deity anyway, because we don't fully understand the gods, and saying that we do is just hubris, and because we don't fully understand deity. It is beyond our comprehension. So we're basically analyzing the little tiny peephole into spirituality that we get as human beings through the human lens of experience. So to say that you should only focus on one element of what we can glean feels even more inhibiting to me. So I would say, take the myth, enjoy the myth, read the myth for sure, deconstruct the myth, go through people who have gone through all the etymology. It's fascinating. I love that stuff. I'm a history student. I find it fascinating. But don't stop there.
Yeah.
So there you go. Soapbox aside.
No, I think that that's a valid point, and I honestly think that ties into both of them. That approach has to be taken for both of them. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah. Like, really. I mean,
the information is so limited anyway. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so you have to kind of go, all right, well, let's go beyond that. Let's feel around the edges and see what threads we come up with, Yeah. And then see, hey, does this thread tie into that one? Does this connect to that? Oh, hey, look, we've made a knot. There's a story.
We made a ladder. Let's go down.
Yes. So Uru's Road said, I would like to mention that crows are currently going crazy outside my window as you're speaking, Joey. Something I want to tag onto that is that's another similarity between them.
Yeah.
Because Hel is traditionally seen as having ravens, but in working with her, no, man, it's all black birds. Like, period. I will get grackles all the time. Crows all the time. Ravens still, but just black birds, because she shifts. And that's another aspect. They're both shifters.
And they're death birds as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All blackbirds to me, or even like to the point where there was one point when I was seeing a lot of blackbirds with regards to the Morrigan, and they're really quite playful little. they're funny as anything, but to me, I still felt that Morriganic energy when there were blackbirds. Mm-hmm. But that's true even in the myth, right? Because Hel gifted Odin his ravens.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. There's definitely a theory of that. So one of the first things that I was told was that, and I didn't know that other people had that theory, so I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone that just
this is mine.
Yeah. But it said that it's actually said that Odin got his ravens from her. Why is it so bright suddenly? I'm sorry. Pale girl problems. There we go. But yeah, I've heard it say that way. I've heard it as Odin gave the ravens to her. But either way, there's definitely a connection there with them. What I was told is that she gave them to him as a thank you because her brothers kind of got the short end of the stick. She got a realm. Jormungandr got to hold the world together forever, and Fenrir got chained up. She definitely got the better end of the sticks here. And I always saw that as a sort of thank you, personally. Is that written in a book? No. Am I telling you to believe it? No. I'm saying go ask her yourself.
And there's definitely that crow death thing because symbolism, energy, human preoccupation. So humans have always been preoccupied with ravens and crows as omens, foretellers, bringers of death. And they've, for as long as human beings have been documenting it, at least, they seem to have been associated very strongly with death. In terms of Morriganic mythos, it's because they were found on the battlefield. They ate people. They scavenged the meat because they're omnivores. They eat both meat and vegetables or plant life or whatever. And it's interesting to me that they're omnivores very closely to the energies of humans. Not that all humans are omnivores in the modern sense, but they have the ability to be. So and they're really, really intelligent as well. I really think that they're so clever.
Very
so in the Celtic myth, they are how would you call it? They transport the souls of the dead by consuming the flesh to the other world. That's like the role of like the carrion crow. Harbinging. So that's their sort of death phantom role within the Celtic Morriganic myth. And that would make sense in terms of Hel if they were seeing crows on the battlefield as being associated with death. Or just, with death in general.
So I know that the Valkyries are Odin's, right? But there's some sort of link there. I have yet to figure this out, by the way. But there's a link between them, between Hel and those Valkyries, because they're both carriers of the dead. They're both the greeters. And also, I will venture to say that when I say Valkyrie, I don't picture this like big white Saint Michael looking angel. With gold breastplate, like a lot of people do. That's not what they look like to me. They're much more like black-winged, raven-looking ladies. But psychopomp is a good way to connect them. There's a lot of psychopomps too. Like I think that's a big thing in dark goddess kind of area anyway. Dark goddesses tend to be psychopomps.
Do you want to define psychopomps for anybody who's confused?
Yeah. So a psychopomp is someone who ushers the living to the dead or the dead to the living as well. They're kind of the go-between. So Charon from the Greek myths, the boatman, he would be a psychopomp. They
kind of bridge the gap between the living and the dead, but it can go both ways.
I won't say pierce because that sounds so aggressive, but they're able to pass through the veil in both directions. And they're able to ferry souls essentially like that.
Literally meaning guide of souls. That's what Magpie says.
Yep.
Okay. Just in case anyone's like, what on earth is a psychopomp? Especially given the week.
I thought about it after you said that. I'm like, oh yeah, they probably might not know what that. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Especially after this week. This eclipse week, dude.
I know.
In my brain. I can't remember my own name.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely, and I mean, like, Hel is known for greeting when a child dies, like a baby is stillborn or something like that. She's known for greeting children, and she greets them with her living all the way, which is another thing, like that shifter stuff. She will come to you in different forms. Sometimes she's all living, sometimes she's half and half, sometimes she's all dead, sometimes she's naked, sometimes she looks like a Grim Reaper. Like, no, that's a legit thing. Like, I had a friend who she showed up completely naked just to throw him off. And that is the entire point. Is like, she will show up in the way that you don't expect her just to throw you off. Because it makes you have to look past what you see and into what you don't see.
So I've had Bave do this to me as well. So Bave is the aspect, if you like, of the Morrigan that I work with the most. I've attempted to work with, I either work with the Morrigan as her whole self, if you like, or Bave, but it tends to be Bave. So there are people who work almost exclusively with Mocha, and I try to work with Mocha a little bit, but I live in the death space, and that's where I naturally gravitate towards, and it just, that's how I end up being. So Bave has shown up at one point, and it's so close to the description of some of the descriptions of Hel that it threw me for a minute, where she's shown up with like a half skeleton face. And Bave, and she just like, boom, like, and I was like, okay. And my
thumbs up. All right.
Because at that point I was just getting used to the shape shifting, which I feel is like the Morriganic energy above all others. There are people who are like, she's a war goddess, she's a death goddess. I'm like, if I had to pick one, which I never would, but if I had to, I would pick shapeshifter above everything, because that to me is how her energy works. It shifts and the image changes. And this is something which a lot of people are really argumentative about, and I know that Cris knows this. The way that people represent these two goddesses is crazy. Like looked for images of Hel, Cris, and they're very lingerie model in Viking underwear.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
And there are some images of the Morrigan which are so soft. And I understand why people, some people like these images and some people like these
well, different people will be
statues
drawn to
and things.
Sides of them as well to some degree,
Oh yeah, everybody perceives deity completely differently, so it's all about perception and things. But I want a Morrigan that's bones, like and you can see like battle scars, and you can see like flesh cut away or something, a little bit more morbid, because death is, she guards death.
It's death, literally. Yes.
And this is a similarity between Bave and, Bave / the Morrigan and Hel, is the way that they basically own death. In a sense.
Don't pretty it up, because then it's not.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why. I mean, for me, my first encounter that I realized it was her. We'll say it that way. She, because I also work with Hecate, and I've been working with Hecate mainly, Hecate and Odin alongside each other. And Hecate is actually like, it's a family thing. My mom works with her, that kind of thing. So, and I was resistant of her, but that's a whole other story. So I've been working with her. And then I saw this woman, very pale with long dark hair, but she was younger. And Hecate, while she is said to have three aspects or three faces, even with land, sea, and sky, people interpret that differently. Some people see Maiden, Mother, Crone. Some people see simply three faces. But she has always been crone energy to me personally. When she comes to me, she connects to me via that. Okay? So when I saw this, I was like, this is strange and something is off. is this a new lesson? And then I'm like, no, it doesn't feel like her for some reason. Like they're so similar, but it doesn't feel right. And then the girl started crying black. And first of all, I guess I was in a cave. To get there, I had to go underwater. I didn't know. It felt like drowning. So that was like the vibrational frequency in my body adjusting. And then I ended up in this underworld cave. You could hear the dripping. There was one little puddle to go out, right? Like, you know, underneath. And there was a woman, and she was in all black. You couldn't even see like where the dress ended and the cave began. It was so dark, but her face was like porcelain white. And she just stared at me with black eyes. And I'm like, hello, you know, like I think it's Hecate, but you don't feel the same at all. So what's going on here? And then she started slowly crying black, like blood, but black. And then she opened her mouth as like a silent scream. And it came out of her mouth in a rush. And then it became one with the cave. And then I could see it crawling up the cave walls and around and engulfed us. And instead of being scared the whole time, I was like this feeling of coming home. It was a womb space. It wasn't like I'm going to be swallowed up. It was womb space. And I started crying. Like it was really overwhelming. And after that, I was like, who the hell is this woman? And in working with another friend who does a lot of channeling, he does a lot of like safe work and stuff. He started speaking through her. Well, she spoke through him, and she doesn't speak a whole lot. But and then I turn as this is going on, and she's fucking coming up in my hallway, like just rising up from the ground, like Grim Reaper style. Like, talk about making an entrance. They don't, I think both of them don't lack in pizzazz.
Dramatic tension. Sure.
Yeah. Neither of them fail at that.
No.
And that was how I had that first thing. So, like, to me, she's very tall. She's very lean. She's very sculpted, pale. And her robe is like smoke. It's black, but smoke. It's there yet not. And it like tendrils out behind her as she walks and just disappears. It dissipates. She is shadow. So that's one of the ways that she's appeared to me. But I realized as a kid, she also appeared as literally what looks like a Grim Reaper at the foot of my bed all the time. And, you know, so she changes. She's appeared to me as exactly. And so like I think that that's definitely something both of them have in common, where they're like, I'm not just gonna show up, we're gonna show up.
So I did want to draw one thing that you said that I think was really important, is that at some point you felt deeply uncomfortable on first meeting. When you were feeling that feeling of drowning. So when the Morrigan first showed up, she showed up as a man. And I thought it was a messenger of the Morrigan. That's how I perceived it initially. And then it dawned on me, like halfway through, like, oh no, wait, this is the Morrigan. She's just like, she had this big black cloak on with black feathers on. And she'd like puffed out, so it looked more manly, but it was kind of obscure. And then she had a crow mask on that came down over her eyes and over her nose. So it looked crow-shaped. And I think, if I remember rightly, you couldn't see her eyes. It was like one of those masks that Bunny always shares, and I've forgotten what they're called. But they're often presented as like, maybe people can see through them, but they're made to look like you can't. They're made to look like a shield over the face.
Like the black mesh.
And that experience was followed by going through every horrible thing that had ever happened in my life, like bringing it forward, bringing it forward, bringing it forward, bringing it forward, and making me really freaking uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. Like, you're going to relive every awful thing you've ever been through, and we're going to look at it. We're going to look at how you reacted to it. We're going to look at who you are because of it. So that was a little bit like drowning. So there's a similarity there in like how every emotional thing that you've ever been through, drown in it. And at the end of it, she was like, sounded like a he, but she was like, so would you take any of it back? And I'm getting chills now because I can feel that she's around. Yeah. Like, yeah, I did say it. And I was like, no, because I am who I am today, and I don't know who I would have been if I'd not been through all the horrors that I've been through. And I talked more in depth with Morrigan about it than that, but there was that uncomfortableness, that forcing you to face all your shadow and your fear. And I think both Hel and the Morrigan, or Babd in particular, force you to be better by mirroring. Basically, they like hold a great big dark goddess mirror up to your face, like, you're gonna look and you're gonna learn from it, and they both do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also there was an element to that too where hi Darren, coming back. There was an element to that too where you said that, you know, would you take it all back? And then it's like, no, because you are how you are now because of that. Hel is very big on that too, that you're not necessarily broken. You are defined by the battles you've been in. You are more shaped. You is more shaped, okay? No. You're more shaped. You're, you know, like the blade that's been tempered, like you're strengthened because of it, and you have better definition of who you are as a person, not defined outside of you but by you. And I think both of them have a very big lesson in that.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of, I'm going to say masks, but it's to do with imagery. It's to do with the way that we see masks. Me? No. Masks? Yes. Drink it in. It's something new. No. But I know I don't know for a fact, but I know that the hypothesis of the Harlequin mask originates with the goddess Hel. I know there is that thread, and that's very much about the hidden, the unseen. I know that Hel has her one all-seeing eye, which is flaming and maggots. And there's my boy. We've been waiting for you. Every time I'm talking now, you're my friend, aren't you?
Every time.
And so there's that level of seeing and unseen with Hel. And this is true, I feel, for the Morrigan too. It's said that, you know, that one of the lines from the Morrigan song is that Morrigan sees without her eyes, and the way that she came to me and she didn't have her eyes on view. And somebody in the chat who, Uras, when I first met the Morrigan, she appeared with mirrors for eyes, but I wasn't reflected back. It was unsettling. And there's a lot of that with regards to Morrigan imagery as well, with regards to perception. And if you think about these two goddesses, just in terms of how the world even now perceives them, like, people will be like, are you sure you want to work with Morrigan? Are you sure you want to work with Hel? Aren't they? Look at his little eyes over your hands. Sorry.
Hold on. Yep, like that. There you go.
Yeah. He's like, oh, you wanted some eyes in shot. Hang on, here we go.
Just never mind the cat behind the screen.
Yeah. So both of them are perceived, like, you will get people to this day who will come and tell you these two goddesses are evil. To this day. People will say Hel is evil just because her name is Hel, and therefore they take the Christian association, and therefore, you know, she's evil, and people are like, oh, Morrigan's just obsessed with war and death and she wants everyone to die, so she's evil. And what that is both goddesses are associated with death, and people displace their fear of death onto their fear of these goddesses. So I think they both deal with perception, bad reputation. I can just hear them both going like, I don't give a damn about bad reputation. You can just see them in like the underworld, can't you? Is that play?
Just posing against the cave wall, like.
Yeah. Just goth sisters in the cave. Yeah, that's them. That's them totally. So I will talk a little bit actually, because Cris talked about how she physically saw Hel, or some of the different ways in which you've physically seen. I'm saying physically seen. It's a clairvoyant seeing, but seeing without other eyes, seeing in the realm of spirit. It's not like quite. It's a very difficult thing to explain. It's not like this water bottle in front of me. It's like seeing with my other eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like when you're remembering a memory and you can see it, but you're not actually seeing it. That's how I describe it.
Describe it. Yeah.
So Babe has shown up half skeletal, as I mentioned, but she likes to flip between her crone and her maiden element, because she's a shapeshifter and she embodies both. And she's shown up before, and she'll just have sharp white hair, bright red lips, and then she's just sex on a stick. And she was last time she was like the whole snake walk and everything, you know, like that. And I was like, okay, like I always do this. Like, every time she's different, I'm like, okay, like, sure. And she's like, sex is death, and something like that, like, and it's sexy or something. And I was like, sure, okay. And they both do
I like
this
that
really.
Every time we give them things, your response is like 2 thumbs up. Sure. All right, we're going with it.
Well, it's because the whole point of it is to throw you off kilter, isn't it? And if you when you've gotten to the point where you just accept that they'll do it, then they're like, fine.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's shown up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So she's that's something we should talk about, because they've both been through. I've just seen that. So she shows up sometimes crone-like. She sometimes shows up shape-shifting between the two. There's the myth about the old hag that I think Babe is associated with the myth where she's like a leprous old hag and she wants men to sleep with her, and most of them don't. And one of them does, and then she turns into a beautiful woman and gives him some kind of goddessly boon. I think that's in the myth somewhere.
Style of going bass backwards, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's all about perception, about the way you see things, about not seeing and then looking beyond what is in front of your physical eyes, if you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, go with that question.
Use your intuition, and to not only use it, to trust it.
Yeah.
Strengthen your feelers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Shakti said, it's interesting how I am seeing Hel coming mainstream now. I see her everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. When Joey's giggling, because it's been a thing. When I started kind of consciously, I'll say, working with Hel, because she's shown up, I just didn't know who she was. But when I actually knew, look at how angry he is for being confined to this other table. You see this?
He wants to snuggle me.
Sorry. All right.
He just wanted to come talk to me, didn't you? I know.
You stay over there. The microphone is on this. No. So, when I first started working with her, I think it was me, and then I was like shocked when I found out that Kellyanne Maddox worked with them. And it was pretty much like all. That's it. You could find a little bit on Rocketru and find like some stuff in there. You could also find his name is escaping me at the moment. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. the Northern Norse shamanism stuff, he was around. I forget his name.
I'm not sure offhand.
I'll put the name under the video later once I'm able to look it up, guys, so you know.
Eclipse brain. Eclipse brain.
Yeah, right? So, anyway, though, when I first started, there wasn't really much mentioned. And then Loki got really, really popular because of all the movies and stuff. And and now there's also one coming out that will have Hel in it. So I'm expecting, like, as much as you're seeing her right now, you can see her a ton when that movie comes out. And I don't think it's a matter of, because everybody always jumps to, like, oh, it's so hip. And, you know, I think it's more of a matter of exposure and a lesson that needs to be learned in society at that moment. Something that goddess energy brings. And so she comes up in creative ways. I'm kind of a fan of, like, how Joey talks about the evolution of deity. And I think that that's definitely a part of it. I think that there's a universal level at that moment that people are needing to look at. And so she will come up in a creative way to get you to face that, to get you to work with it, to get you to learn. And some of them will stick with it, and some of them learn it and move on, and some of them don't want to see it, so they do something else. But
I think, for the movie, it may well be about challenging the established system. Because in the movie, Hel is challenging the way things have been structured, the overarching, you know, government, if you like.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of government problems right now in the world, and a lot of people becoming very disenchanted with everything. And then the Morrigan had her upsurge and still does, but I kind of cracked up because I'd been dealing with this question a lot because when I started, and when I started even just talking about the Morrigan, the only other person that I remember vividly being out there was Laura Daligan. In terms of YouTube, at least. There were a couple of other people who were around in terms of books, and then, like, other bits and pieces. Stephanie Woodfield is the other sort of person who really influenced my path early on in terms of her book and things.
I think a lot of people start with her book, it seems.
It's a good place to start. I think her book is not as overly structured as some, and it's a little bit freer than some are a little bit restrictive. Although in more recent times, Morpheus Raviana released her book, and I really enjoyed her book. Even though it's a little bit more reconstructionist, it is really interesting. But when I started, it was on YouTube anyway, it was very much just Laura Daligan.
Yeah.
And Morrigan had an upsurge in popularity. And part of it is it from being talked more about, that the message then gets out, and then she starts influencing people's lives? And is it like a cascade effect that you know, I started talking about her following Laura Daligan, and then that reaches more people, and then more people are open to the experience.
Yeah.
I've had people who've worked with me on some level, and Morrigan has shown up just to nose around their life. Like, I've had people be like, I've gotten to know you.
I literally was just talking about this in a mentorship last night, Joey. That Hel and Morrigan will both, like, pop in and check on someone before I even get there.
Yeah. How did that to me?
There. That's a very similar thing.
How did that to me? And she showed up and she had this death grin, and it was like the grin that just kept going. And I was like,
long.
I was like, hi, Auntie Hel. Hi. Like,
just
we've got a question in here, which was Nathan. How come the Morrigan has not revealed herself as the one revealing my life horrors to me? I feel her all the time, but she stays visually hidden. She's very mysterious, but I do feel her thoughts. Okay, she's
sorry. It's not mine. Go ahead.
Oh, you can answer. I said stuff about Auntie Hel.
I was just going to say she's wanting you to trust your intuition, and you're fighting it.
She's known as the sign of water.
Like, there's an element of, like, you decide.
So I actually talked to somebody about the Morrigan basically testing her so it was such a sneaky way about it, because she was like, oh, I'm being bombarded by these other messages, but I just want to listen to the Morrigan. And I was like, I think it's the Morrigan bombarding you with all these messages, from pretending it's not her, but bombarding you with them so that you will stick up for yourself, draw the line in the sand and say, no, I want to listen to the Morrigan and I understand now. Sometimes the Morrigan basically pushes us with regards to perception so strongly that we're getting like flustered or whatever, and what we actually need to do is basically stand up to the Morrigan.
Yes.
Like she will do that.
Yes.
Like you need to stand up to her.
That is another,
it's like a respect
that's another similarity. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you have to show that you feel that you are worthy of working with her, because if you don't believe it, why should she? That kind of thing.
Okay,
and
anyway,
I mean, I've had my moments.
So I don't watch Game of Thrones, right? But you know the like a girl is no one thing?
Yeah.
For those who know, I'm trying not to like spoiler stuff. And then when she finally changes that answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like that moment. It's like, no, you're not going to tell me who I am or what I should be afraid of or da-da-da. I am this. So it's like, it's like a claiming of self that you have to do at them.
I mean, I've had moments where I've gone to the altar and I've been like freaking a mess.
Players come out to play.
And I've had my moments where I've been feeling weak, and I will take that to the Morrigan, because I've been like, I am feeling emotional or sad or throwing myself on the floor and I can't push through this and I feel weak. And the Morrigan always challenges what we call weak anyway. She's like, what you're doing it again. You're associating emotions with being weak. Now, and some people would be like, no, the Morrigan wouldn't do that because, you know, she's hard and bitter and whatever. Morrigan hasn't ever been hard or bitter with me. She's just forced me to reassess what I'm telling myself, like perception again. Stop telling yourself you're emotional. The deep way you feel emotions is weak. It's a strength, and you need to turn it on its head and realize it's a strength. Because when we feel more deeply about things, our magic deepens, because our magic comes from a place of emotion. And we feel more deeply and care more about the world around us, our tribe, the people we connect with, the people we want to protect. If you don't have a cause as a warrior, then you're a brawler. To have your heart in the game in terms of what matters to you, even to the ancient Celts, the king was tied to, or queen, was tied to the land, and it was considered to be a blood bond, and it was their sacred duty to protect that land and their people. Yeah. It wasn't just like a bloodthirsty conquest thing. It was a sacred bond between land and king or queen, sovereign, and the people. And the land would suffer if the king or queen was not worthy. So there's this whole like honor thread going through. Yeah. So I think we have to be careful when we're talking about warriors and things, because there's this idea that they should be cold. And this is true with death goddesses in general, that just because they're a dark goddess or a death goddess or a goddess of war and whatever, that they're then emotionless, that they're then like cut off. And I think both Hel and Morrigan do this sit back and analyze thing. And people then take that as them being cold and emotionless. And I don't believe that for a second. I feel like that's very much like baby bird from the nest style fly.
Yeah.
I believe in you so much, I'm going to push you out of the nest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not that I don't care. It's not that. Yeah. Go on.
I was just going to say, I think that this is one place that they are different. We were talking about this before I got on. Morrigan is much more like battlefield, like you said, oriented.
Yeah.
Than Hel is. That doesn't mean that Hel isn't going to fight, but she's much more of like, if I could compare her to a tarot card, much more of a judgment card than like the warrior. You know? She's much more likely to be kind of like, you know, speak your piece, I'll weigh it, and we'll see what we're going to do about this. Like, she's not really so much as a battlefield person as a politician in some ways, I guess you could say.
Sovereign, yeah.
I mean, and Morrigan is queenly as well, absolutely, but it's a different kind. I mean, don't get me wrong, she's got claws. She's got, yeah. But it's a different energy there. That is one aspect where they do differ, I think. Yeah, I agree with that. But Shakti asked a question. And first of all, hi Shakti. Second of all, she says, when I was a very, very young child, I had a crow or raven that used to come to my bedroom window and sing to me at night. I now feel like it was a goddess, but still wondering who it was.
Well, gods and goddesses associated with crows and ravens are vast.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them. When people say to me, oh, crows, so it's the Morrigan, I always tell the same story. Like, the crow was the last critter, if you like, associated with the Morrigan that came up in my life. And there are animals or insects that came up in my life which are not in the mythos that I am deathly sure, and this is another correspondence between Babd and Hel, that one of the major ones that I've talked about, and to my knowledge, before I spoke about it, I'd never seen it anywhere else, is the moth. Yeah, and there was, and that, to my knowledge, before I'd said it, I'd never seen it anywhere. I hadn't seen it in myth. I hadn't seen it in like anyone had written any essays or anything. And I did a lot of reading in the beginning of like other people's experiences, what I could find, which wasn't much in the beginning. I do it a bit now, but
she's asking though, is it typical for them to visit at night?
Crows?
Yeah.
It depends where you live. First and foremost, where do you live? Do you live in like the countryside, or do you live in a town?
Yeah. There's another element to this too. So there's something called crow woman in my family.
Crows and crow medicine. Yeah.
So when you get to a certain point and you join with the matriarchs in my family, so joining with the ancestral women and kind of holding space as a sort of priestess, as a speaker, and taking up the responsibility of that, you're known as a crow woman. And that is because you're speaking for the dead. And with them singing and everything, that is initially what I thought of. Like when you said that, that's what I felt. That it reminded me of that kind of situation. And I know you were really young, so maybe it was a foreshadowing kind of thing.
So crows in a city are a little bit more likely to be around at night than in the countryside because of the synthetic light, because it plays a little bit with them animals and how they adapt to live in a place. Also, crows are very intelligent, like we mentioned, and if there is food around and they can get food more easily towards night when there's less humans around, they'll figure that out. But like Cris was saying, crows are messengers. There is a whole element of crow medicine. There is some thought that crows actually represent the souls of the dead in some ways. So maybe it could have been like an ancestor through a crow singing to you. They can also be foreshadowing of your spirit animal or your totem animal. Spirit animals tend to be outside of ourselves. Totem animals tend to be the animal that represents us. So the thing is about one specific animal or bird or whatever it is with regards to gods or goddesses, it can be, but you kind of have to take the tapestry rather than just that one thread. Like, what are the other elements that you've been looking at? What else have you been feeling, dreaming about, seeing in nature, messages you've been getting, meditation, things that speak to you, synchronicities, things that give you chills, etc. Because just crows on their own, it's a very limited
here's an
puzzle
insane
piece.
Thought, and I know Shakti, you do a lot of stuff, so like this might be one of those like really dumb questions, like did you make sure it's plugged in, kind of that attitude, but just on the off chance, have you just directly asked?
That's what I usually say. Yeah, ask the universe, light a candle and ask. Yep.
You're welcome. So, yeah. I think that is a thing too, though. A lot of people, when they see like crows or ravens, they'll like just kind of assume instantly that it's one thing. Not to say that Shaki is, but oh, okay. So she didn't. All right. See, there you go. Is it plugged in? So yeah, I think that it's one of those things where like you kind of have to check yourself in the beginning and just kind of like feel it instead of hope it, because that happens sometimes too. Like in the beginning with Hel, I thought like, oh, it's Hecate. It's got to be Hecate, right? This is going to be Hecate. Wait, this doesn't really feel like Hecate. You know?
Yeah.
So there's an element where it's perception. We see what we want to see sometimes. And they're like, okay, but put that aside. What do you really see?
Yeah, this is something that we mentioned that we should probably go into before we run out of time, is that they both tend to test you. They both challenge your perception. They both want you to figure your shit out by yourself, because I'm not giving you the answers. You're going to figure it out. And if you figure it out, then we will go forth from there. And when I looked at who the Morrigan was, because I'd always spoken to Mother as far back as I can remember, but I didn't know who it was. She'd always been there, always. And when I looked back, there were so many hints, and it was, I had a list. I had like 2 pages with a list, and it wasn't just one thing. It was many building blocks that kind of then opened the gates, and then it was like, okay, gotcha. And then I was like, is it the Morrigan? And she was like, finally. I mean, finally. Like, I've been here since you can remember. Finally. Like,
yeah,
you know. But testing is something that they both do. It's like they will push you to think differently, to see differently, to question everything. And I think this is a similarity of maybe all dark god, maybe all gods and goddesses in general, but some are a little bit more
Well, I think okay. So I think initially to interact with deity, there is a test in itself a lot of times, because you have to trust what you're, beyond what
you're not mad.
As the mundane. You know what I mean? So there's already like a little bit of a test there anyway. And like Joey and I hate saying like dark goddess, because it's really limiting. But I do find that there's more of a test there than like when I've worked with, even Persephone, who could be marked as that as well, is still like, she wasn't as testing, at least for me. Yeah, exactly, Arwen. She's, yeah. You see it. Which, don't you have like a whole video on that?
Visions of blood oozing from the mouths of humans and animals dripping to the ground and being absorbed, hoping it's a sign to explore ancestors. I'm trying to think what my video was called. I have talked about it at length about
it was
how
just called Dark Goddesses. Like,
it might be.
In parentheses, dark.
Yeah, it might have been. I can't remember. Somewhere on my channel, yes, there is definitely one video talking about it a little bit more in depth. Yeah, I mean, you think about it really, what does dark mean? Why are we putting goddesses and gods in boxes? Why are we saying that dark equals bad? Why are we saying it's negative? Dark is nighttime, dark can be relief, and there can be just as much pain in the light. Yeah, there can just be just as much uncomfortableness in the blinding light, the blinding heat, as there can be in the dark nighttime, and there is a hardwired human fear of the nighttime because that's when predators used to come out, but we've kind of moved beyond that. But that sort of natural psychology is still there, and you can see it in horror movies for the most part. Like 99% of all horror movies, the scary parts are dark or dimly lit, or lack of vision, or lack of being able to see, and lack of being able to know where you are. Things like that is to do with our fear system. There is a psychology behind not being able to see, and that being a big fear for most of humans, and how much we actually rely on our sight.
We just discussed this a little on your channel as well the other day with 3 a.m. and all of that, talking about like the 3 a.m. time. I feel pretty sure. But yeah, when it's dark, you have to rely more on your other senses. So maybe that's a line there, since we're talking about relying more on, what you don't see. Maybe that's part of it. That's a correlation. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else we haven't talked about? Let me look at my handy dandy notepad.
So we talked about the death elements, we talked about crone elements, we talked about the animal symbolism, which is the same.
I will also add that Hel, even though like everybody always brings her with black space birds, she also has wolves and snakes as well. Wolves and serpents, because of her brothers. She's very close to her brothers.
I've actually made arguments for snake energy with Babd and the Morrigan too, because the Celts associate the eel with her. That's well documented. She transformed into an eel and bit Cuchulain's leg. But I sort of was looking about the whether or not eel, was it bit or broke? She might have broken his leg. Anyway, I think it was bit. Anyway, so there's a theory that the Celts sort of meant all snakes when they said eels, so that it could be like that snakes are associated with the Morrigan, and it kind of is my belief in a lot of ways, because you've got the snake as a symbol of healing with the staff of Asclepios, right? So if you don't know what the staff of Asclepios is, it's that medical symbol to this day, which is like a stick with like the snakes.
Two snakes.
Yeah. And Morrigan is known to be associated with disease and the healing of disease. So she can cause diseases, but she can also heal. That's one of like her magical abilities. Some people associate Morgana Le Fay with snakes, and there's kind of like that thread, although some people completely disregard Morgana Le Fay as being anything to do with the Morrigan. But again, it's all interpretation and myth. But I really feel like
it's all interpretation in general, because I mean, like we said, they can come to you with something that you don't expect, because it's the puzzle. It's looking past. So even though we're saying like, oh, these are their animals, there could be other animals. I mean,
yeah,
a goddess isn't going to be like, oh no, I can only work with these. Like, I'll do what I want.
I'm a queen of death, bitches. Yeah. Everything dies. Everything. All animals die. But yeah.
Everybody's Wednesday Addams.
Yep. But there's that transformation rebirth energy with snakes as well, which applies to both Hel and the Babd.
And there's also the whole Kundalini, primal power, raw power.
Power from the base up.
Yeah. Yeah, they both have a lot of death transformation.
And the sexual energy.
Yeah, that too.
Says Magpie. I will say there's been all this recent backlash about saying the Morrigan is a sexual goddess. There are a lot of people who are getting very arsey saying that she's not. So it's one of those current.
I mean, like I'm not a daughter of hers, but I've always kind of seen an element to that fairly easily.
There's multiple myths about the Morrigan wanting sexual relations with different gods and men. So there's the one where she sleeps with the Dagda at Samhain, and that's like the coupling and the union, and that's very much like the Dagda is the giant, the god of life and celebration. He's what's the Greek guy with all the wine? The Bacchus?
Bacchus.
Dionysus.
Yeah. Dionysus Bacchus.
He kind of has that feel. Dagda has that kind of energy to him. I have a video all about eel energy, if you'd like to read that. And so for some people, that's very much about the union of life and death at that point. It's not so much about the sex, it's about life and death coming together at the moment of Samhain, which is, a very important part of it. And some people have said that some people only reference Morrigan being sexual because of this one liaison. But she tried to sleep with Cuchulainn, and Cuchulainn rejected her, and he was like, I didn't come here for a woman's ass, and then she attacks him and stuff, which is something I cover in the eel video actually, which is that if he had slept with her, he would have gained her gifts much more easily, but because he rejected her, it then became a battle. And then sex and a battle is kind of the same thing within the minds of the Celts. It's just slightly off kilter to the ending. So it kind of has an image similarity. You could have slept with the Morrigan and you would have gained her boon and her gift, but you rejected her sexual advances and then she attacks. So that's another one. And then there's the one I was talking about earlier where she presents herself and wanting to sleep with these men, but she presents herself as a hag. And so some of them reject her, and one of them, I think it's just one of them doesn't, and then he gains her favor from having done so. So there are multiple stories, at least, regarding to her sexuality, and I feel like she is, because Celtic women were sexually liberated and free. They could get divorced if their man wasn't satisfying them sexually. That's in the to me, if that's who the Celtic women were, and the Celtic women went into battle and all the rest of it, then of course the Morrigan would, at least as a reflection at that point in time anyway, would be a reflection of their belief, which was sexual. So I don't see the need to sort of sanitize her to the point where she's not sexual in a modern age. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think they differ a little bit there too. I mean, obviously she will use sex as I'm gonna knock you off your balance. For that, she's, like a Marilyn Manson effect, like the shock value thing. But there's not really a lot in terms of her as a sexual being. If anything, I find that she's very removed from a lot of things. Kind of looking in the window from the outside. So
I wonder if that's because
difference there.
Maybe because she occupies a realm of death much more, whereas Babd doesn't necessarily occupy just a space of death. She acts more like a psychopomp, and she forewarns of death and does her whole death screaming banshee wail thing. But for the most part, she's considered to move between and that's an interesting difference between the Celtic mythology and the Nordic one, is that you have more realms, at least that I have perceived it to be. You have more realms in the Nordic tradition where you've got all your different realms, and then she rules over Helheim, whereas in the Celtic tradition it tends to be just the hall of the gods, the realm of the gods, and they kind of cross over a bit into our realm.
Hel will visit, but Hel is more of a if I could sum her up, it's like death always gets what it's owed.
Yeah.
The end. Meaning she always gets what's hers, and she's death. So, I don't have to visit you ahead of time. You're going to show up here anyway. It's how she's kind of, okay, I'll be here.
She doesn't feel the need to play about with humans so much. I think that's what it is. It's she knows that she's going to get what she's owed, so she doesn't necessarily feel the need to screw with humans.
Well, and also the fact that in the myth he sent her there.
Yeah.
So it's more so because of the fact that she was half a corpse. So, you know, he was like, nope, you're not gonna live among the living, man. That's not a thing. But here, you have your own world. That's weird. And so I think that's also partly why she kind of like, she's like, okay, well then I'll stay clean here, and I will live here, and this is where I spend my time. But don't think that.
Do you wonder if she ever rejects it a little bit because she felt rejected by life? And sees that as maybe an energy of life, and therefore she rejects that a bit because she was rejected by life, and therefore she rules over death and rejects aspects of life a little bit.
Somewhat, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know that she will visit her brothers from what I've picked up. And she also, and this is not directly referenced anywhere, but just from working with her, she has a very close relationship with the Norns, which really makes sense in terms of being a death goddess.
I love Norn energy. I did a set for the Norns, her request. It was some of the most beautiful energy.
First time I went to meet them, that was crazy. But what is the one movie? There's a movie like Beowulf, I think it is. No, the CGI one where like you go to the Oracle and the Oracle's like clothes are like slow-mo swimming everywhere and everything is very like
300.
Time is all wibbly wobbly.
That's 300.
Okay, 300. Okay, so that like slow-mo thing that they show her doing, like that feel is what I get with the Norns, but make them all shrouded.
That's kind of the same energy you saw with Hel when she had all her smoke tendrils and spectral tendrils as well.
Yeah, but the Norns are more of a
I wonder if that's time. Do you reckon that correlation is time?
Oh yeah.
Because the Norns rule over time, basically. And then but Hel has time within her realm as well, because literally that's the end of one time into another.
Even within her realm, there are halls and things that run at different paces. Like she's like Helheim's like an airport in a lot of ways. I describe it as that. I don't know anyone else that describes it that way, but to me, like that's the best way to explain the feel of it. It's like you get there and you board the plane. That's the lesson stuff that you need to mesh through, or maybe it's like a hall, or you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different halls, there's a lot of different corridors, there's a lot of different like cave tunnels. And each one leads to an entirely different experience and where you need to go. But when you initially get there, it's usually like, or at least for me, when I initially get there, it is usually the by way of the pebbly like death beach that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
But I've walked the road and gone through the gate, and you know the traditional thing that's usually spoken about, which is the Road to Hel, which is a good book. Look up the Road to Hel. That is one that you can read on her if you can find it. I think it's on Amazon. But it talks about her in a bit more of a scholarly way, less as like a deity in a lot of sense. But it does talk about the culture more, and kind of what they meant when they spoke of her. But yeah, I think there's definitely a time correlation there. For me, like when I see Hel, it's like a black smoke, and it's that death energy. But the Norns are like,
there's a mortality thing as well, of course, with the Norns.
Well, also the Norns are shown as gray to me in a lot of ways because they're neutral.
Yeah,
they're very like almost like moving statues.
Yeah,
Phantom of One.
Yeah.
And they're intense.
Yeah. Well, the Norns is something that came through to me a few times with regards to me moving. Like they were showing up in really random, weird places with regards to me moving where I am now in my life, and it's like, this is your weird move. And it really was this very stoic energy of, this is your fate now. And here is a picture of the Norns in your feed for when you've never seen a picture of your Norns in your feed ever, but here's one. And I was like, okay.
They also come a lot if you're working with Yggdrasil. If you're working with
being at the base,
then they'll show up a lot. At least from my experience, because even with Odin, like if I'm working with the tree with him, they'll show up. But Hel, there's something about her just being in close proximity. Like I get this feeling that like she could literally like, I'm just gonna go down the street and visit my neighbor the Norns. You know what I mean? Like there's a very like a familiar feel between them.
Like they all gather around and have tea or something.
Yeah, kind of. But like the tea never ends because they play with time itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's not really talked about a lot, but definitely there's a void of time.
I love the Norns, and I don't really feel like there's a Celtic reflection of the Norns, which is because oh, that's awesome. Gargoyle, the Norns have come to me as 3 old ladies that own a yarn shop, cackling away about people's lives, knitting and cutting away.
Oh my God, I love that.
I was thinking about the threads and the threads of weird and like the cutting and stuff as regards to like the mortality element that Hel and the Norns would have similar feel to that at least the final death element is very similar in that kind of
it's like
weird and
I'll take it from here, thank you.
So Hel's there with her little basket getting the threads from like the yarn shop. That's what we're and at that point Cris says, oh no, you're back.
I'm back.
You froze up.
Yeah. I don't have a little basket. Yeah.
I didn't say that. I don't know. A big basket, then a big black basket with skulls on.
It would be a gothic cast iron, but no.
Yeah. I'm convinced Hel would want a glittery black basket with skulls on it. I'm convinced.
I don't know. She's not really one for glitter so much, though.
I'm telling you, I'm gonna keep winking at her until she starts asking you for glitter.
Yep, Hel rolls in to get her stuff. Yeah. Yes. I would like my souls, please.
Is there any questions that anyone has?
Yeah. Any questions? Because we're coming up on the end.
We're about time. Yeah.
Yep.
I think we've floored people. People have been like, this is so deep, I'm going away to think about it. I've read about 3 or 4 people who have said that. I think we've floored people.
I didn't even see that.
There's
overloading people.
Yeah. We're overloading. Here in the death space.
I will also take this time to say that both she and I, like she provides consults and I provide mentorship. So if there is more you want to talk about that you can't find on here with us, you know where to find us.
You can come talk to me about the Morrigan for an hour. What's the next episode? Well, I know what the next episode is because I told Cris what we needed to talk about.
Yeah. Cris doesn't remember. Cris will remember when she finds the notes.
What was the exact title? Hang on. I will find the exact title because it was something.
We talked about punishment versus motivation.
Yeah, it was following that. Hang on.
I have experience equals perception written down. Not it.
No.
This is the problem with taking too many notes, guys.
Yeah, which we both do because we're earth signs on crack.
There's
basically.
so many books, and then like, hold on, let's just there's a magazine, but just for a second here, can we just notes? Yeah.
Shadow displacement.
They're asking how you say babe.
Shadow displacement is the next topic that we were going to do.
Oh, yes, that's right. That was a good one. Yes. I misplaced the displaced.
Yeah. So bathe is how I pronounce it, bathe. There are people who say that I say it wrong, but apparently there is two different Irish translations or something. So, but how I have always said it is bathe.
Yeah, and I pronounce hell. It's really complicated, but you can get it. I believe in you.
Yeah, bathe.
Yeah.
Bathe.
Yeah.
Because it's basically spelled like badaba.
I know. I always have to double check because spelling it, you're like, are you sure that's how that's spelled? Because it really doesn't look like it should be. Like, should that be a word, really?
When you get the one which is from the Gaulish, they are like badaba kathoka, and you're like,
nope. You see, there's a reason that I'm like, I got Greek and Norse. Y'all have fun with the Celtic. I don't know. I was in a coven that was that worked with Welsh-based stuff, and
I'm half Welsh, and I can't. I'm half Welsh, and I can't even.
Bless my heart. I don't have a mind for that. Yeah.
Shadow displacement will be next week now, though, I think.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's a good one.
So that, and we'll come up with
distance from it.
Lessons of the eclipse. That will be the next one. Like, oh my god, I need a drink.
Oh my gosh. Can I just also say too, guys, like with the eclipse stuff that's happening, like Joey and I kind of had a click where we were like, all right, well, this is about choices.
Yeah.
And you can choose how you want this to like set with you. Yeah. Anything on him? I like the dude. I've never worked with him personally.
No, so many people don't.
I mean, that's pretty much what I got. I like the dude. Never worked with him personally. I feel like he always gets the short end of the stick.
Yep. So what we were saying about choices is we both came to the realization that there is so much about the choices that we make and how we decide to interact with things, and that it was all coming to this head of you can either break down and scream and cry, and that's fine if that's your choice to, but you can also like say, you know what, no, I'm getting to the point where no. And anybody else's shadow anybody else's shadow can get out of the door right now, because when you're dealing with your own and then you're getting bombarded with everybody else's shadows, it's too much.
Just like mirroring yours, and it gets intense. So like, as much as right now everyone is like, speak your piece, speak your piece, speak your piece, you also can use that same voice to be like, you know what, I need a minute.
Yeah.
This is not my circus, not my monkeys for a second here, okay?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely that element of what you respond to, you empower as well. Like, do you want to empower other people's shadows?
Well, yeah. And that's part of the power. Okay, so shadow, we were talking about the other day with Kellyanne, is like, shadow work is power through understanding. So right now you are understanding that your choice is where the power lies. What you choose to do in your reactions to things is where that power lies, where your power lies. It's not outside you. It's nothing like that. It's your choices. You know what I mean? It's you.
And ultimately you're only responsible for.
Feel powerless. Exactly. Have the responsibility to yourself and others, but also the power itself, the capability to choose different. And sometimes that's a really harsh fucking lesson, and I get that. But there's a point where like you've got all those swords in your back and you're down on the ground, and it's like there's nowhere but up, so you just choose something else.
Stand up. And that's a hell lesson and a bathe lesson while we're at there. Like, get up.
Stand up,
just get
take
up.
the swords off, and keep going.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is an element of that to, like, get over it. But, like, understand that we have been processing. This is not something that we haven't, like, you know, taken time to lay down and get pummeled with. We have been processing. And if you're getting to the point where it is taking you out, essentially, you are perfectly capable of saying, nope, I'm going to choose to react different.
Yep. And I had a literal moment this week where I was like, I'm not reacting this way anymore. I'm drawing a line in the sand about it.
I remember because I asked her, I videoed with her later, and I was like, what happened? What is this? So yeah, just gonna say that for right now, because I know people are having a hard time.
Yeah.
Sometimes
there's a lot of confrontation in the world right now.
Yeah, because that goes back to the whole us taking a stand against them when they come to shock us as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And redefining strength. That has been something else throughout this entire eclipse. People have a weird analysis of what strength means in
oh my god, they're all singing Get Up, Stand Up. Can we please sing Bob Marley? Come on. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
Is that how we're finishing this video?
Don't forget about the fight. You guys don't understand. Bob Marley is like a sweet spot for me. When I was going through really bad times in my teenage years, I put on Bob. I love Bob.
That's probably a synchronicity right there.
I still to this day, my friend that I grew up with, when she is in a bad mood, I will call her up and play Three Little Birds on her voicemail. Like, if she answers, I'll get mad and I'll be like, hang up. I need to leave you a message. And then I'll just play it on her voicemail to cheer her up. We live 500 miles away now. We're in our 30s and I still do it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
You absolutely should.
So, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, so Bob, there we go. we ended a goddess death match with Bob Marley. So in the end, everyone was
sounds
like,
about usual for us, to be fair.
Yeah. In the end, everyone was like, one love.
We need a bit more one love.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that actually is the message that I've been getting this week, is just like love. Love.
Yeah.
Stay focused on it. There you go.
Promote what you love instead of bitching about what you hate is a big thing for me right now, because it's very easy. Yeah, I mean, it's very, very easy for us to go on about all the stuff we don't like. But ultimately, what difference does that make to the world? Vibration of, yeah, it just puts out this vibration of judgment on what other people are doing, or like, I don't know. And ultimately, we have a choice, and we can stand up for the things that matter, and we can discuss the things that matter, and we can say, you know what, some things in the world are more important than our fucking bullshit right now. Like, the people who need us to stand up for them, then I don't like something right now. And that to me has been kind of like, then take it to a place of love, and take it to a place of, like, I don't want to say sisterhood, because that's very much like a feminine only thing, like a human group, whatever the human version of humanhood would be, like standing together, and not like, because there's so much right now where it's like anti-feminist, and then there's the racist stuff, and then there's the anti-spiritual stuff on different sides, and then all this anti, and it's like, if we just friggin' find commonality and realize that we're not separate, then we start doing a better job.
Yep.
The world is 8 bells are screwed right now, but we can start doing a better job.
My whole thing is this: be responsible for the energy you bring, guys, and know its power. The end. You want change? Be it, act it, make a different choice for yourself or someone else. That's it.
Yeah. Be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah. Cliche, but true.
Yeah, totally cliche, but there's a reason it's been around.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys.
Are we done?
We're done. We're done. We are done now. So, yeah, because everybody's like, my brain.
My brain. Yeah. You liquefy my brain. Oh,
I'll tell you what I'll do, guys, is if you have any more questions, so there's anyone viewing this later who has more questions, put them down underneath this. And the next time we do another Babe in Hell, because chances are this will be a thing, because we are going to write a book about it, we'll address them. We'll talk about them. Goddess Deathmatch, round 2.
The underworld.
Finish him. Wait, they're both finished. Wait. Fatality for everyone. Yeah. Okay.
All round. KO,
right.
KO, KO, KO.
They need a musical chat.
KO, KO.
Y'all ain't ready for a musical chat.
Musical live chat. Isn't that all of our chats?
Everything? That's exciting.
We could totally sing a whole live chat. That's the sad thing about it.
Chat.
That might be a thing now. You might have started.
This needs to happen. I don't know what we would talk about for that. That's like appropriate, but we'll find it. I have
no idea.
We'll figure it out. Musical live chat.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Joey,
I will say, can I plug?
Any announcements?
Yeah. The store is back, bitches. Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. I finally spent 2 months arguing with the tech people, and I finally got back into my store. The Halloween stuff is going up today, so I'm putting up the Halloween things that go up every year first, and then we will bring some new products for this particular Halloween. But the Jacko cauldrons are up. The Starry Ween, like Halloween but starry, smudge is up. And there will be other bits and pieces too. I'm writing a blog post right now, so hopefully in the next day or two. Oh, are we bouncing? Live chat, the musical. Welcome to our live chat. We'll talk the whole way through, except we're singing Victory Woo. Woo!
This is Joey Ween. This is Joey Ween. Joey Ween. Joey Ween. Sorry, on supplies.
Oh my God, that needs to be a thing. Looking at that, you can buy a Bone Daddy and an Oogie Boogie Spell Orb.
I'm so pumped for that. You guys have no idea how excited about Halloween I am. Actually, you probably do, but still.
Yeah.
Super pumped. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Anything else?
So, I'm also working on with Darren and one other fellow whose name I can't remember, the Symphonies of Seder, and we're actually making Viking meditation music based on the runes, rune sigils, and I helped make the first one, and that might be why there's crow noises in it, because I insisted. But I'm really enjoying it because it's completely out the ballpark for me. It's something that I've never even looked at doing before, so it's completely different. And I'll just say this about Darren, I'm sure he won't mind, is that he didn't think he could do it, and then we created this thing, and it was like, I thought it was amazing, the little bit that he's released. And what I'm hoping to do going forward with that is, once we finish the Viking one, I want to do a Celtic one as well. So there should be more like meditation music that we put together like that, and that was super exciting. So you can actually pre-order that on his Gumroad right now.
That there's a preview of the music and I turned it on while I was doing other stuff the other day, and I love it. Like, I liked it so much that I forgot that I was listening to the preview, and when it stopped, I was like, what happened to my Spotify? And then I realized. So,
yeah,
it's awesome. I love that.
So,
I'm really pumped for that.
If you want to help us with that, you can go pre-order it, pre-order the album, and you can find that on gumroad.com/Torvol, Torbol, and that's the new thing on there. You can also get my consults on through that Gumroad page as well. If you want to come talk to me for an hour about just about anything within respectful boundaries, then we can talk about anything you like. I've talked about the Morrigan twice now because it's a fairly new thing for me to be doing, but it's been really interesting to have in-depth conversations about the Morrigan one-on-one. So if you guys are interested in consults with me or my other half, because his is on there as well, they're both available through gumroad.com/Torvol. And Starry-Eyed Supplies is live. I'm still taking customs as always.
Exciting. You guys, she's been trying so hard to get this website back and running. You have no idea. Every day.
Yeah.
So
you have no idea how much I have annoyed a tech team.
We were worried that she wasn't going to be able to get it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
I will probably update it at some point and change the server because the server is not as quickly as I would like it. So I might look at a new website for it anyway, just as a cleansing thing as well for me. But I really wanted it just there so we can carry on supporting myself because that's my livelihood. So
yeah,
there you go.
Speaking of supporting you, so I had a flash sale on my mentorships. That was it was advertised on my Facebook and on my newsletter. So if you guys aren't subbed to the newsletter, I highly suggest it so that you'll know if something comes up if you didn't. It's over now, but in my mentorships that I've been doing, and I've been doing a lot of them this week, thankfully, I use Joey's Otherworld smudge. And it is amazing. And I use an oil that she specially made for me, and it is amazing. And I actually have 2 oils that I use. And the other one's my Death Midwife oil. And you guys, like, her shit is so good. Shameless plug. Go give her love. Just saying. And affordable, in my opinion.
And the Persephone anointing oil is back in stock, by the way, because I know a lot of people really wanted the Persephone one.
That's another
and that's
name
back in
that's coming
stock
up a lot lately. Persephone's also been getting mentioned a lot. Okay, so also some quick announcements for me since you guys are there. So the shadow work mentorships that I have are lowered for this season because 'tis the season to do that kind of thing. So what is normally $300 for 4 1-hour sessions and $100 for a 1-hour session is now $50 for a 1 hour and $150 for 4 1-hour sessions. And also the paint, if you have pre-ordered the paint, the Hel Babd Death paint, then on the 21st you will be getting charged because that is the release date. Unfortunately, I will not be able to restock the store immediately on that day as I had planned because my mother is having heart surgery and I need to drive there to take care of her and be with her, obviously. So that's going to put a delay on it. It's family. I hope you guys understand. Like, that's my mom. So, but when I get back, I'll get it restocked as soon as I can and, keep that in store. And I also will be having a new color come up for October. We'll see. So yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Yeah, she does.
Well, we're also working on the podcast.
We'll tell no one.
On yellow. There you go. I ruined it. No, I'm not really. We're calling it P.
You are out of the board. I will no longer be asking you what you think now.
It's called Yellow Snow.
But there are some of my test tribe has gotten their paint, because I did have a test tribe that I did ahead of time and made stuff for, and they got it before the release. So basically, there are videos now online, and if they're not, there should be some coming. I know Solitary Witch Tracks did a review of it, so if you want to check it out and see like how that works, look up Solitary Witch Tracks. Her latest video shows some. But anyway, I love your faces. I hope you understand about the delay in the restock. But the pre-orders will be going out on time, so don't worry about that. That's not going to get interfered with. But yeah, so I love your faces. And again, if you have any more comments on Hel and Babd or any questions or anything, leave them underneath this video. We'll address it next time we talk about this topic. Also, if you're interested in paranormal stuff, go check out Joey's channel. Also, if you're interested in Kellyanne Maddox, because who isn't, go check out Joey's channel, because we just did 2 live chats with them just the other day.
And we're going to do another one with Miss PPI Jen. Here on Chris's channel, I believe, about paranormal investigations, where we're going to have video and audio footage of spirit ghost activity, and we're all 3 of us are going to talk about it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes, all things spooky. Yes, let's please.
All
right, guys. I think that covers everything. That was a really long announcement section, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, so I love your faces. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Until then, Joey, what's your start?
Do I have to?
Come on.
Oh, all right. Okay. Stay fluxy, bitches.
Yay. Keep it fluxy. Love your faces, Mom.
Stay fluxy. 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 Okay. Anyway.